Alright, so next part to this spinning, tumbling animation with our astronaut that we rendered in Carrara. Here's an example you may have seen at the end of the prior tutorial. And we'll talk about how to composite that. There are several ways to do that. But before we do that, I want to just take a look at what it is that we exported, that we rendered out of Carrara, and how you can look at it and maybe convert it to other formats as well. So if you remember, we did create an animation as an image sequence. So under the animation menu, we can now go and load or look for that animation and load it. And so what we'll do is we'll navigate through the computer. Here on my D drive is where I have it, and I saved it on the Carrara subfolder here on the spinning astronaut. And so here are all my TGA files, my Targa files. Remember, I saved it as that, and I'll explain later why I saved it as a Targa. But for now, let's say we want to just load one or two or a couple of these frames. We could go scroll down all the way to the bottom. But let's see, just to explore initially, let's take the first frame, that's the one with the 000 on the numbers there, and take about a dozen or so of these, and then load the selected. This will free the current animation, and there you go. So sure enough, we have loaded an image sequence. When you load it into Dogwaffle like this, it is not taking the alpha channel with it. Now it might from the last frame. Let's find out. Let's go to selection and turn the alpha on. No, it did not. Okay, so that's one thing to remember, is that when you load an animation through the animation image sequence, even if the images have the alpha channel in there, the animation as such will not. Alright, so at this point you might do that differently, and that's, for instance, to load it into the brush. We'll actually talk about that a little bit more as we go and paint with it, but just as a first look, you can go and go to animated brush and load a sequence there too. And so this one has a slightly different interface, and we can go to select the mode for Targa rather than BMP. And see, that's the reason why I wanted to render it at not as a PNG file initially, because I felt we might need it in a brush. So we can load it as an animated brush to Targa. Let's go and select the folder. Now sometimes, depending on your Windows version, you might have that dialog here disappear. I just click on the menu bar at the top here on the window decoration to bring it back. And it is asking for us to, again, clarify where do we want that image to come from, or that image sequence. And so we'll do Daily Dose, Carrara, and Spinning Astronaut. There it is. Now, so in this case, we'll just look for a folder. It's now showing the images that are of type Targa in that folder. And there may be a few that we don't want, but certainly the first one is this one here. And in this case, we actually don't need to drag and select which frames we want. It will take them all. It will take as many as possible, starting with this frame. So what we'll do is we'll say load that, and so now it's loading each frame that it can find where that number sequence is increasing, and loading that not into the animation underneath it that you already see there, but it's loading it into the brush. That's what we call an animated brush. It's a custom brush with a sequence of multiple images. And so next thing you can do is perhaps store it, just to make sure it's kind of in a safe place. Although it's not saved on a file, you can certainly place it here in memory, and you can see the plat pattern indicating that it has a transparency mask there. So when you enable the preview, that's the PRV here, when you enable the preview and start painting with that, you can see that it has that brush in it, and as you paint over it, let me go and erase here, as you paint, it keeps turning because it's got this animation sequence. Let's go back to this guy here and show the film strip. It will take a second or two, and then it will show you all of the images that are in that sequence. And at this point, what we'll do is perhaps change the opacity and make it fully opaque so that the astronaut is not disappearing. Let's erase to black, and there you go. So that's one thing that we'll explore a little bit in the next tutorial. But what I really wanted to show is going back, let's clear this one, going back, disable the preview, going back to this animation, just loading it in here, loading the sequence as we did a little bit earlier, but this time loading the whole sequence. So I'm dragging down all the way to frame number 119 and loading this selected set of images. Again, this one will not have the alpha channel, but what I wanted to do is show you that you can now, for instance, if you wanted to only have it go from about here to about this much, and then delete the remaining frames. There are some basic commands you can do at the frame level. You can either right click on the toolbar to see it in the animation bar to see it, or you can go right here under the animation menu and see at the frames level. So you can set an in marker, set in and set out. You have shortcuts for that here too. And then do some delete or edits to that. So for instance, let's say we wanted, let's say for instance we wanted the first frame all the way to here to be deleted. And then we wanted it to just come over like this. So we'll have the in marker right there, mark it like this, and then go to the last marker, out that. And so now we have an image sequence that's highlighted in blue here as we scroll through that. And you can simply go animation, frames, delete block. So we've defined a block going from the in marker to the out marker. And delete block will delete all these selected frames. Now you can go and see that there are just a few frames left. Now these frames are a very short animation. And if we set the FPS here, frames per second, to 30 frames, and we know we have only 41 frames, or 42, from 0 to 41, that's a short second. That's probably a second and a half, roughly, even less than that. So when you play it like this, it's not going to take a long time. Let's say we wanted to keep that last frame, hold it a little bit, right? That's often something you want to do, kind of an intro 1 or 2 seconds as it does a final animation orientation, and then kind of hold it and maybe do a blend fade away or zoom in on that last frame. So what you can do is you can select this last frame here, make sure you scrub through to see that last frame here, and first of all we want a copy of that, a duplicate copy. The fastest way to do that is right there where it says plus, insert a frame. It will make a copy of the one you currently have there, and then so these two are now identical. So you can now set the in marker, just like we did before, to select a block, and then set the out marker on the other frame, and now you have a block of 2 there, and you can go and, oh, that's the wrong menu, sorry, there it is, select frames, copy, you can copy that block, and then you can perhaps make sure you're at the beginning or at the last, doesn't matter really here, and you can go and insert it right there. Insert block before current frame. Now, so now it's inserting 2 frames, but we have a bigger block now we can select, so we can set the in marker here, we can set the out marker there, and again copy that right there, copy the block, and perhaps now this time do that a few more times. So let's say we go insert insert the block before current frame. So we're now inserting 4 frames at a time, which goes a little bit faster. And you could do that a few more times, or just stay with that 4 frames at a time, and soon enough you'll have 30 more frames of that same image. I'm going to do that one more time here, set the out marker and copy that, frames, copy block. So now we have a fairly long block, and inserting those, what's that, about a dozen frames each time that we say frames insert block before current frame. So you can see here that we can quickly add easily 20, 30, 40 frames or more. Let's see one last time. Insert block before the current frame. There you go. So now we have an animation in which we do see a little bit of a transition here, right? The last final rotation, and then it just stays there. Ooh, but it looks like we actually did something wrong. We have 2 frames that are not exactly identical, so we have a little jitter here. That was my bad. I should have verified that before we actually copied that, but that's okay. Sometimes you'll do a little bit of a transition with that anyway, or let's say you blur it out, and this is what it currently looks like. Not perfect. We definitely will want to improve that a little bit, or perhaps find which one frame it is in that sequence that's no good. We can see here. Here's the sequence. Yeah. So there's one. These frames are all the same. This one is bad. This one's good again. So we could actually just go here and delete this one frame. Right, so we could go cut this frame. So we can easily see which frame it is that's it's perhaps every other 4. I must have selected the wrong one here somewhere. So yeah, there's every other 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 is bad. And well, we can fix that here too. There's one more. So you can see this is kind of a set of level editing commands. You can right click on the toolbar to see the menu, or you can select it from here under frames, and then some of the tools like set in marker or set out, and delete current frame or cut frame, you have a shortcut for that here as well. And so that's that for creating a little extension at the very end of the animation. I'm going to actually do one more here. I'm going to say, okay, here, this one is no good. Let's set the in marker here, go to the out marker, and delete this animation frames, delete block. There you go. So I'm back to a much shorter ending here, but still good enough to say, okay, let's grab this one. Let's make it out. And let's see, where do we start? Roughly here. Let's make this the in marker, animation, frames, copy the block, there it is. And so now we can go to the first one here. These are all the same now, we should be fine. Unless there's a glitch in this. I'm actually beyond the 9.1 released version here. So if there's anything kind of glitchy, it might explain that. But so let's see if we can go and copy that block and go there and frames, insert block. There you go. Yeah, very good. So here we have, let's go to the last one more time. Frames, copy block, excuse me, insert block. So now we have an animation that's not doing that little jittery dance at the very end. Perfect, that's exactly what we wanted. Just hold it there for a second or two. Right, of course, at that point, if you needed that to go even slower, you could do things like time stretch. Again, these are all the frames level commands, like time stretch, make loopable, reverse frames. Maybe you want it to go in a different way. Like reverse frames will actually go, away from that. And so maybe then also apply a transition, like a scaling. Let's go to the timeline and apply some scaling with the transform collection. There it is. And transform. And so when we go and scale it, we could have him go away like that, right? So perhaps initially we are kind of even zoomed in and moved in a little bit like this, and put that on the first frame, and at the very end here we'll gradually zoom away, move out like this, and then here we suddenly kind of go really far away. Might even add some rotation to it, like so. Alright, apply that. And so now we have a little animation like this. Alright, so thanks for watching. This was part 2 of a little mini-series on our spinning astronaut.